Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to today's module. We are going through the series Marketing Management, a VUCA perspective, and we are covering the fundamentals. And today we are here for module 8. I am your instructor Siddhiprad Bhattacharya. When we talk about marketing greats, we talk about Philip Kotler, whose books are always the ones read in MBA schools. He said marketing is not the art of finding clever ways of disposing what you make. It's the art of creating genuine customer value, and this is paramount in the case of organizations which have been able to think their creative and marketing problems through with critical understanding of their scenarios and how they have taken the strengths that they have been blessed with and turned it into a supreme advantage. We will cover a lot of formats in our entire course, but today let us take a moment and explore two international case studies which will tell us about how certain organizations fared in their local scenarios, whether it be the international scenario of the first one or the more localized scenario of the second one. Both are very interesting understanding aspects of how each particular case scenario plays out. And in order to plan the victory for each particular organization or brand, you have to create success at world beating scale, which only is possible through planning. Here we explore success stories of these two organizations, and they have seen success globally. Obviously, one is much larger than the other. The second one has met fabulous success in its local region. So, we will cover both. Today's marketing planning cases are about Google and Kareem. Google needs no introduction. It is the world leader in search engines, and it obviously has a lot of products that it runs across the digital platform. And Kareem is again a tech product. It is a ride sharing app in the Middle East. Both are unique in their particular functions, in the way they have grown up and the challenges and the ways they have managed to overcome the challenges, and we will explore both their stories today. First and foremost, let us look at the world beating organization and brand Google. Google was born in 1998. Stanford PhD duo Larry Page and Sergey Brin were working on a particular search engine platform. They wanted to, and this was a time of Alta Vista and Yahoo, which were running the entire function of search engines at that point in time. They wanted to create something that really ranked pages for what they were worth and not purely by how much content or how much usefulness or the lack of it was exhibited by a particular page. Search engines called crawlers were very faulty in those days, and they did not turn up the greatest of results, and people were very frustrated with the kind of results that they got when they searched for something. The search engines would not be robust, and so therefore, automatically people just kept bouncing off page of page, and they kept going from one web location to the other in search of what they really wanted. Google solved this with their technology, and they used something which was phenomenal and that changed the rules of the game. It also built something which was their core competence across the years. Now, before we get into the mechanics of it, Let's hear what Google was actually all about. The name Google came inspired from the word Google. Google is one, a mathematical one, followed by 100 zeros. That is the stupendous amount of data that was envisaged by these two young PhD students from Stanford. They wanted and it gets reflected in their ambition also, it is in their mission statement. They wanted to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. In our previous framework and strategic conversations, we have covered purposing. Purposing is core to understanding the fundamental DNA of who you are and what you stand for as an organization and as the founders of that organization. Larry Page and Sergey Brin managed to capture that very succinctly in this famous mission statement that they have. And the technology which they pioneered with and which actually broke the way search engines and crawlers would operate in those days was called PageRank. This was their pioneering technological search effort. What it did was, it focused on internet search as the initial goal, and later on this same PageRank format, it formed the foundation of what we know today as search engine optimization. The entire premise of search engine optimization is based on the PageRank formula. Sergey Brin and Larry Page developed the PageRank algorithm, and it did a certain few number of specific tasks. The algorithm now that we know as PageRank has evolved since then, but when it came about, it did this. It analyzed the number and quality of links. How do you manage a quality of a link? You find out how many pages are referring to the page you are landing on, and so therefore, it actually checks that how many people outside of your domain have linked back to your source as the primary or the original. This referencing is primary to understand how a particular page will be looked at and how many people give it weightage outside. This helps the algorithm to keep the page at a certain pedestal within the search results because of its relevance. It matches it with the core search terms. The core search terms that the user has fed in their algorithm. At the time of development, it surpassed competing search engines like Yahoo in efficiency and accuracy. It proved to be way better than their algorithm at the point in time, and it resulted in Google quickly becoming the dominant web search provider. It also did something which was unprecedented. It leveraged a vast collection of data and processing capabilities as it grew in size and it grew in strength. And it is not just that the data was being looked at, it also took that particular input which it found when it married whatever the search string was with the page ranking algorithms answers. It also gave actionable insights for businesses and consumers. Think about it. Your search gives you an answer of how many people who are published online, whether through website, through blog, through a video and whatever else, they are relatable to the search string that you have put in when you do it on Google. The idea behind this is Google uses massive computing strength to ensure that you get the right kind of relevant results for your search query. They don't charge you for it. So, if they don't charge you for it, what is happening typically? Somebody is paying for all of that extra computing power which is being fired the moment you type out your search string and press the enter button. That is being paid in two ways. Part 1 is Google stores your search history with your permission, of course. Now, it has become very, very stringent with the GDPR rules, but till the time cookies were fully active, nowadays cookies need permission from you. They could store your usage habits not only on that particular site, but across sites using the browser history. This allowed them to understand where you have been, what you have seen, where have you purchased, how much you have purchased, from which particular sites do you like to purchase, and over time it has collated data which it can actually fashion into a pattern, a trend. It can actually almost start to predict what you will do next, where you will go, who you will buy from, which particular brand will it be, and a variety of things which point you out as a particular audience member who does a certain few things. We have talked about target audiences. In this case, your search string gives you away as the person who has searched for something, hence you have shown interest. Remember a claim from the previous conversation. A claim is something you are veering towards. Right now you are aware and you want to look for certain things. So, you are curious about it. The 5 A's, the second stage is where you are. And typically from those aspects, what happens is your data is useful for businesses which may have that kind of product or service offering. When they have that kind of product or service offering, that is typically what is getting pushed to you by these businesses, and it is meeting you as consumer. It is a marriage of convenience. No two things about that, but you become the product and the businesses end up paying for two things. One, getting the access to that particular analysis, and the second part is putting relevant contextual advertising in front of you that pushes you towards the action aspect of the 5 A's we spoke about. As Google progresses down the search engine story, they keep enhancing their algorithms, and that they do to maintain a competitive edge. Even with the stringent GDPR rules that have come in, Google takes your acceptance of certain policies which allow them to store certain data, certain usage data which you are allowing them, because you want to have access to certain services. In lieu of using their services, you allow your data to be used by Google. Although nowadays there is a lot of data privacy involved, but still your data is something that Google has a hold on. They will not share your data directly, but they will share insights and use you as coinage along with people who are similar to you in mindset, in demographic terms, in terms of their search trends, in terms of the ability to spend, and a variety of other factors, whichever way you to slice and dice the market. A variety of innovations have been brought about by Google, and they run multiple projects which they build from scratch if they find the idea nice and worth a tinker, and at times they become full-fledged products as well. And these have helped Google climb the services ladder because they are entirely offering services, and for businesses as well, they are providing the same services, but from the business interface lensing, and at the same point in time you get consumer facing products. How many of you remember that during the launch of one of the Transformer movies, at that point in time Uber was using Google Maps' data, it was using that as the bedrock to plan its entire overlay of its own app on. The tie-up used transformers, caricatures, transformer branded design to showcase small to large cars in transformer look and feel on the Uber app. So, they used the layer of geopositioning which Google gave them, and on top of it they landed the branded effort in which the tie-up was done between Uber the brand and Transformers, the creators of Transformers the movie. So, in this way businesses made use of base platforms as services, and they landed their communication, their narrative, their product on top of it. So, this was obviously a very, very nice PR exercise for the top 1% of consumers who would use Uber at that point in time, and it got them a lot of eyeballs. Innovations like that and a lot more is something that keeps tech behemoths like Google afloat. Going through the history, in 2005 they launched a powerhouse package called Google Analytics. It would tell you a lot of things about your website. It would tell you where the traffic to your website came, who were the people who uniquely visited your website, how long did they stay on that website, did they bounce off early or did they spend time, in which particular section of your website did they go and station themselves, what kind of data was viewed, and obviously all the page rank items which showed what external links did they use to come to your website. Did they search for you organically and then from the search results did they come your way, or did they use an external hyperlink to land on your web page, and the list goes on. There is stuff you can look at in terms of geography, you can pinpoint it down by state, city, you can look at it by timeline. There are a variety of ways you can slice and dice the entire data on your website once you have installed Google Analytics and you are tracking your website. So, it allows you get insights into the website you are owning and how the visitor who is appearing on your website, how they are behaving. And all these things, data on visits, if there are any ad click responses, any user actions they have clicked and opened and filled a form or something, all of those things get caught and they get recorded. So, Google Analytics proved to be a powerhouse. The data from Google Analytics actually helps a lot of advertising going forward, which typically landed up in the form of AdWords, where advertisers could adjust their campaigns dynamically based on market conditions. So, let us say they found a unique keyword which was not taken up and hence had a lower bid value. They could take that keyword up and allow people searching for that particular keyword to come their way. Alternatively, if they really needed people with a specific disposition to look at them, they would pay top dollar, but they would ensure that they would get the best keywords for that particular search string or search query or disposition. Now, what was happening is they were creating assets. The customer's data was the asset and they were marketing it to audiences, creating something called the marketing asset management, a system which was akin to a high net worth portfolio, because you had specific choice stocks, shares inside of a portfolio. Similarly, in this case audience data proved to be a portfolio for a variety of organizations ranging from FMCG to consumer durables to food and beverage and such like. Now, at the end of the day, when you are creating something that is constantly improving and you are innovating to provide the answer to whatever you are doing, then you are going to have to innovate. You will always have to be at the edge and create something new, so that people look at you and they take notice of what you have done, what you have created. They created a lot of free online tools and they boosted user efficiency through those tools. Now, a variety of things that people could do, for example, Google Maps. We have talked about Google Maps as an example. It allowed you to plan your travel from point A to point B. They also created things like Google Translate, which allowed you to change the language of an entered text into a whole host of languages which they provided. And at times you could actually correct and add your corrections to it, because if you were a native speaker, you understood the language better, you could do it and Google will accept your inputs as something of a review. In earlier days it did this. Over time it built the capabilities to do this more scrutinously. As they added capabilities, as they added potential newer possibilities like languages, they used this to enter existing markets. Now, if you've gone and traveled in a shared taxi service in India, you will have noticed in different parts of the country, the taxi driver has the flexibility to choose which particular language Google Maps talks to him in. Google Maps provides notifications step by step. It tells them which route to take, what to avoid. If there is a better route available because of certain traffic conditions, it also prompts the driver with that particular piece of information, also gives them the choice to change their current path to the better one, and therefore save on time, save on fuel and a variety of other things. All of these capabilities have helped Google enter markets, become very locally aligned, because they can now take it at the vernacular level and reach each individual, and so therefore they are ready to mold with the individual's tastes, requirements, capabilities and such like. And this has broadened the advertising opportunities, because at the end of the day, if they are aggregating knowledge basis which marketers can actually put out their products and services and advertising based on those in front of those audiences, then with the different languages that are there, with the different socio-economic classes that are there, with the kind of spends that they can do, with the kind of devices that they use, with the kind of data packages, you can keep slicing and dicing the data till the cows come home, and you will still have more areas to explore. So, Google has refined the entire online marketing space to a fine art. They have given access to consumers in more contexts, and at the same point in time, with their permission, they have collected additional data which they will monetize in the future in various ways. Data, once it is there, it gives a sandbox kind of a setting to all the data scientists sitting at Google and to the various product planners who can plan tech products and utilize the said data sets there and create something which works as a top layer on top of that particular database which they possess. In terms of product lines, they kept extending what their capabilities were. It was a very fantastic launch exercise as well. Gmail, one of the most celebrated free mailing services the world over. Yes, they also have their business version, which is a paid one. This was advertising supported email. The way these guys launched it was also phenomenal. They did not go the traditional look at me, I am spending money and therefore you should buy me kind of an approach. They went guerrilla on this. What they did was very unique. They gave it a little bit of flair, they gave it a little bit of an untouchability from the opposite extreme kind of an effect, so that it seemed unattainable. People, very select handful people, started off with getting 100 invites, and you had to choose who you gave those 100 invites to. People, when I have seen Gmail getting launched, I have seen people actually getting a lot of favors just for an invite to be added to Gmail. Obviously, once the email comes to them, they can also pass that same favor along to 100 people of their choice, and that created virality in an age where the word viral was meant with diseases in mind and not really something that happened on the internet. So, this happened, and then 1 billion users got on board by 2016, and this has seen a meteoric rise the world across. I think it is one of the highest used free email service in the entire world. They kept adding more features, they kept adding searchability within emails. They also added a lot of codes through which you can highly target the kind of mail that you have, because over time what typically happens is your mailbox starts to become chunky. So, when you have a lot of email inside your mailbox, tracking that one particular mail you do not know when, sent to roughly whom, is a big problem. So, in order to enable you to have better and more pointed access to certain items in your email inbox, they gave you the ability to search it by name, by address to whom you are sending it, by whom it was sent to you, by the name of attachment, by file type. So, a variety of ways was provided so that you could pinpoint the mail you were using. This was a consumer feature given free of cost, and that also enhanced the overall experience that people were having with Gmail. Google Maps we have touched upon. This also got enhanced over some time, and in 2005 they launched something called Street View. They actually ran cars across streets, across the known world, across mapped places, and because of which they were able to provide street view. So, Google would actually run cars on streets, take the view of that place for some time on the cameras mounted on that car, and with that view they would supplant it alongside whatever you saw from their maps and Google Earth service. So, this impressed users because it was almost walking in the shoes of somebody who was there physically on that street. It came very, very close to that. So, this was something which Google did, which was landmark. Now, alongside this they also were smart. They did not invent everything from scratch. They picked up the best of technologies, the best of offerings wherever they found them. So, YouTube, which was growing into a multi-billion-dollar ad revenue service, they picked that up, and alongside that, did you know that YouTube is also the world's second largest, most preferred search engine? It is not just a streaming platform, it is also a search engine unto itself. Yes, the answers it throws out is in the form of video, but typically people go to YouTube, they search for certain things, they look for hacks, they look for tips and tricks, they look for advice, they look for courses, they look for content, entertainment, and the search engine algorithm works pretty similarly as how it would work for any website based search, and it gives you all of these abilities to look for specific videos, videos which sort of manage to answer the query you have put in. Then they got into Office functionality. They launched Google Docs, where you could write a document very similar to Microsoft Word, Sheets, which was the Google version of Microsoft Excel, and Slides, which was what PowerPoint would be if it were born in Google Studio. And these were free Microsoft Office alternatives, and this they used, and they started to get into the space of what Microsoft was doing. With this, they continued the expansion, and tools came about, like we spoke of Google Translate, which gave them the ability to translate languages from one to the other. The extension to this is Google Input Tools. It provides you with a variety of keyboards. Now, you can type like you were typing in a native language keyboard. You can also use something called a a language translator alphabetical keyboard, which takes text as if you were writing it in Roman, but it converts the output into a script of the local language or the vernacular language you chose. This happens across a lot of Indian languages. I have personally used it, excellent to have. Innovation like this is something which set Google apart. They thought these things through. Phonetically changing what was written in Roman to something in Devanagari or Bengali or Assamese or Marathi or Gujarati or Sanskrit is excellent. Even Chinese, for international languages, I am sure they have managed the same thing. So, this was excellent. Also, they have been able to make the vernacular difference between Bengali spoken in Bangladesh vis-a-vis West Bengal. So, they have made that discernment as well. So, they have gone that deep into the entire process. They have created the calendar through which you can schedule, and alongside that they have created online meetings. So, you can have virtual calls with people over your devices, and specialized search. We have talked about this in the email search variety of conversations. And then they broke open the box. They got into the space of devices where they leapfrogged from software to hardware. They got into Android, which was an operating system for phones, and also they got into Chrome, which is a web browser for browsing web pages, and both these together they used as open source mobile operating system. This was launched in 2008, versions keep coming, and globally they have the lion's share and then some more. They have about 80% of the global market covered. They have cornered all of that, and it is Android which rules the roost. Yes, in terms of value, iOS, which comes from Apple, is also there for consideration, but in sheer volume terms, Google is by far ahead. Now, they have also smartly partnered with brands like Samsung, and Google Play as an app store provides all the apps that are used within the construct to do whatever people want to and use their phones to the hilt. This also generates revenue from app sales. The fun part is Nokia, as a case study, did not take on the Google Android operating system. They felt their Symbian was excellent and they stuck with Symbian, only to later realize that they were completely swamped. Symbian was nowhere close to what Google was offering in terms of the user experience, in terms of what the app store contained, and Symbian and thereafter Nokia just lost out on the race. Nokia has made a comeback, but their entire world beating aura was destroyed because of them not partnering up on the Google Android operating system. By 2017, Google nearly had a third of US mobile ad revenues, with 50 billion as the market standing at that point in time. So, this is the kind of rapid clip at which Google has grown. In the future, Google is already a leader in these spaces and is growing from this point forth. They have got cloud computing, which competes with market leaders Amazon and Microsoft. They are also providing a lot of data warehousing and services aligned with those particular core competencies, and they are serving enterprises like HSBC, which is huge. They are a huge partner to HSBC the world across. In terms of hardware, they have put out Pixel phones, which are excellent devices, very competitive and very similar to the Apple iPhones. In their own unique way, they are also different, but they are high-end competition to the iPhone. And in terms of smart devices, wearables, Google has also made leaps and bounds in terms of progress, and they have got a smart speaker which is called Google Home, and it responds to voice commands and is part of home automation, very similar to Amazon's Alexa. Now, the focus on AI has been growing for any organization in the tech space, as is the case with Google as well. So, Google enhances its product like search, translation and smartphone cameras using AI. It does a lot of bokeh lighting, it does a lot of portrait shooting with the cameras. It gives you language suggestions, it gives you grammatical inferences which you can use to make your writing better and such like. And AI underpins the product innovation and data driven insights, which the massive computing power which Google brings to the fore is something they utilize to the hilt. Now, with about $100 billion in revenue, most of which comes from advertising, nearly 90%, they continue to dominate online advertising markets across the world, and by double digits they grow annually. So, that is the kind of clout and power that Google is really showcasing in the tech and advertising space. When it comes to income from cloud computing, hardware and AI innovations, they are using these to diversify and get stronger for their future goals. So, Google has managed to stay as the innovation leader in the market, and it is vying for space, it is vying for visibility as well as market share, and it is closely contesting the pole position with giants like Apple, Microsoft and even Meta, because in the social media space, although Google tried their own social media avatar of what Meta is, Meta was leaps ahead, but then what interactions happen on YouTube, because people are going, if they are going for long format content, they go for YouTube, and that is also a space where a lot of interaction is happening. So, in all these senses, Google has become a true tech behemoth, and it is definitely here to stay for the foreseeable future. Which brings us to the second contender for today's case studies, Careem. Now, Careem is more of a Middle East localized phenomenon, but that does not take away from its thunder. Careem is excellent and has taken the fight to a global big giant which tried to enter the market, and Careem totally pipped them with whatever they were doing at their local levels. So, Uber, the ride sharing service the world over and the market leader thereby, is something which tried to enter the Middle East. They tried entering in 2013, but they found that their territory was being waylaid by Careem's. Careem's had already launched a year earlier, and they had managed to become a powerhouse. They were a homegrown brand, and that gave them a very strong advantage because they got the local nuance very, very right. And this again talks about the customer centricity we have spoken of in our course directions in the earlier modules. The early mover advantage is also something which they brought into play. They quickly got into a space which was lying vacant, and they connected with the audiences, and so therefore combined that with strategic planning and local insights, they managed to hold their position against somebody with deeper pockets, worldwide acclaim and a brand value as well. Careem did a lot in terms of rewarding people, and the Middle East, if you see in terms of culture, has a lot to do with shopping, bonuses, rewards, freebies and such like. Dubai itself has two huge shopping festivals, the Dubai Summer Surprises and the Dubai Shopping Festival itself. Abu Dhabi also runs its own auto show, auto expo and a variety of festivals itself. So, the whole place is full of tourists coming in, shopping, and the nature of the retail there is that people walk into a retail environment and expect to be treated like royalty. The same thing applies when you walk into a cab. When you are in a travel from a particular point A to point B, obviously you want the best of cars. Dubai already had great Camry based taxi services as such, but at the end of the day, they also wanted a little more, a little nuanced benefit, and that came in the form of the rewards program which Careem launched. They gave a tiered system. Again, this is something which is a step up from what we noticed in Google's Gmail exercise, where they created a niche or a club. Here, beyond a niche or a club, what you are doing is creating something which is called gamification. And with gamification, the tiered system gives you points basis your loyalty to the brand, which means the more you use, the more loyal you are, hence you get rewarded more. And this tiered system is also called a leaderboard. The leaderboard and the entire way of doing this kind of business is called gamification. You make it enjoyable, almost like a game. You give people the thrill to participate and have a chance to win. Typically, all form of dice play or all form of gambling has a certain element of gamification in it. Yes, this is obviously all very above par, above reproach, but the inherent human thought process is that of what if I had that little chance of a spin at the wheel and maybe $1 million coming out of it. So, the reality of any sort of reward program is that I want to be treated a little more special than the rest of the lot there. So, that tiered system is there, which gets you gold status for 15 rides or orders per month, and with that you actually get a lot of benefits. You earn the points which are redeemable for credit, credit on rides, free rides, food discounts, because if you have got something which you can spend only on that platform, then there is a chance that you will not stick around with it too much. But if it is almost convertible to currency like status and you can use it elsewhere, that is when it starts to click. And food discounts, charitable donations, a variety of things that people want to do, they could with whatever points they have earned from their rides. Turning what you earn on a platform into currency is surely it's going to catch like wildfire across all digital and online formats, and a lot many have started utilizing it to a fair extent. There is still scope and room, but as marketers we need to realize that this particular inherent human activity based out of a need to win, a need to overcome odds, is something which can be leveraged to create a system, an environment which rewards people's purchase behavior, and at the same point in time it also builds a certain reason for them to return, increasing the lifetime value that you are able to earn. We have discussed lifetime value as well. It increases the lifetime value that people can derive out of the brand, and the brand can automatically also derive out of their spending. It works like two-way street. So, that is something you need to keep in mind. Other than that, Careem had a package program. People like top-ups could buy bundles of rides or kilometers at reduced prices for frequent commuters because it made sense. It was like a season pass, similar to how you do stuff on a metro. So, this was again something which pushed a regularized habit. People already had the Dubai metro and metros were there in other cities. So, it was not an alien concept. That is something which helped people take this habit on, and this is again clever marketing which utilizes consumer habits and gives them another reward to multiply it on their platform. And they took the hassle away, automatic point addition. The hassle of getting something, if it is taken away, will make you carefree and you will go at it hammer and tongs without a thought for anything else in the world, without a care. And that is why without separate registration, when they started getting automatic point additions, people wanted to take the app and the rides which it offered, because the points were something that would accrue to them automatically. Their key registration number was sufficient, and that also prompted people to spend more time and more rides on that particular platform. Then they also got into the aggregator space. Now, why become an aggregator? Because you can. You've got a base platform and then you build things on top of it. So, you've got a plinth. On top of the plinth, you can actually erect a full mansion. That's exactly what Careem did. They got in Careem Express, which is logistics. Today, what you have with Uber in India, Uber has a delivery service where you give them a package, and from a point to the other point within the city, they will drive and drop your package off. You can obviously put in a pin to ensure that your package is being delivered, and you get assurances, very similar stuff. So, this is what they did. They gave you quick delivery, they optimized the route, and real time tracking was provided to people who were sending their stuff over. And obviously, if you were a loyal customer, discounts were always part of the plan. So, all of these things in all started fostering more reasons for people to spend time and actively do so on the app. Again, cash free transactions ensured that you got exact change and you did not have to carry money around in the wallet that you would have to pay up. It would just be from your account directly. Also, you could, amongst friends, what typically happens is you go Dutch, so you split your fares. You gift some package to a friend or a dear one, and you can also track spending, which was excellent for parents doing it for children or families doing it for elderly. You could actually monitor what their spends were. It was two-pronged. One, it ensured that they kept a track on the necessary activities, and alongside it also ensured that they were not fleeced, they were not taken advantage of. All of these things alongside giving them the reward points which they could convert into Careem Pay credit, using it like currency, was excellent in a way to give them the advantage of coming and spending more and more on the Careem app. This ended up in Uber, which could not fight the battle with Careem to put its weapons down. Yes, Uber was the bigger shark here. That is unmistakable. The world across, Uber is the top honcho when it comes to ride sharing services. So, Uber obviously had way deeper pockets, but because of that, and they wanted to keep that particular market, because Middle East overall as a market is excellent. Think about it. The word Careem spelled with a C is very close to the word Kareem in Arabic, which means peace, which means something that is blessed, something that is used alongside, very, very colloquially, alongside their most important festival in the Middle East, Ramadan. So, Ramadan Kareem is what people wish each other. Kareem is about being blessed, is about being prosperous, peaceful, tranquil, something which only talks of positivity, and it is something which runs across the entire Middle East region when it comes to vernacular language motifs. That really helped them cement the idea and gain acceptance. They had every single thing running their way. It was a very well thought through name, and it helped them hold their ground against a gargantuan Goliath of a Uber, and they stared it down, fought it and beat it. Finally, Uber ended up paying top dollar and bought Careem. That is where the end game finally took its toll. So, yes, they did sell out, but they went home with money bags, and that was where they were totally happy, selling off for a huge amount of profit. And because of their struggle, Uber could not manage to dominate the market, and therefore ended up acquiring Careem, and now is using their local expertise. It is making money now, but the main moolah which was to be made has already been made by Careem, and they have a standing of their own which is unmissable. Post acquisition, Uber and Kareem brands have been kept separate. You cannot kill the Kareem brand. There will be a huge amount of outcry, and it is profitable. Why kill it? It's similar to how Thumbs Up was acquired by Coca-Cola in India, and Coke, despite trying a lot, never killed the brand off. They kept Thumbs Up. In fact, wherever Indian diaspora is, the Thumbs Up brand follows that particular path. It goes with the Indian diaspora and can be found in Africa, Middle East, the US, Russia, the Southeast Asian countries, and a variety of other places wherever the Indian diaspora is to be found. So, very similarly, localized power of the vernacular, which in the case of Kareem worked, the vernacular aspect is something which allowed it to stay very, very strongly alive, and Uber had to maintain both Uber and Kareem brands. Yes, they made parity in terms of services, offerings, etc., but still the derived value of the brand Kareem was stupendous and is still running, and they have managed to expand into a multiple number of countries in the Middle East. So, it is not just the UAE or Dubai for that matter. It has a huge footprint across the Middle East, and it also talks not only to the Emirati, but focuses more on expats, people who come from outside and really may not have a car all of the time, but they still need to get around and they need something dependable, and the name comes across as spot on. So, expats, tourists, people who do not have their own means of travel depend heavily on Kareem, and it is reliable, it gets the job done. And Kareem strengthens its appeal with the locals alongside, because it is everywhere, it is visible, it gives the right feel, the right texture, the right tenor, because of which, starting from the name itself, Kareem bonds very well at all levels. It bonds at the local level, the expat level, the tourist level. The entire Middle East is all for it. It also is in the process of innovation and is growing as the region's leading super app because of the currency conversion capabilities and the loyalty programs. Excellent moves. It's not like we spoke of in the previous model. It's not just about communicating that works marketing. It is intelligently problem solving its way to the consumer's heart and to their wallet. Both ways, it helps the consumer realize a certain problem being solved in front of them and happily part with money, because that gives them peace of mind, it gives them joy, it gives them the space to do other things which they would otherwise have been straitjacketed about. So, this is excellent for people coming to the Middle East. So, with that we come to the end of this conversation. Please understand that the success of both these brands, whether it be Kareem, whether it be Google, it shows a certain amount of strategic thinking. You have to critically understand the scenario that you are playing within, the kind of market forces around you, who your customer is, and like we spoke of in the human to human marketing concept, that it has to talk about the problems that that particular audience is facing. What creates those problems? What is the reason that they have not been addressed so far? What has your competition been up to? How are you going to stand apart and do something that is different, which therefore showcases how you adapt, what kind of customer centric innovation you display, what kind of alacrity and speed is there through which you can move and fill a spot which nobody else has done so far. And Kareem excelled by understanding the regional beliefs and the nuances of culture also, alongside what they did in terms of technology and in terms of the kind of services and the reward points that they got out there. They also understood the messaging. The second layer of the marketing exercise was the messaging, the connect, the trust, the belief, the feeling of safety that this is from within us. So, it is dependable, it is not alien to the entire environment. That builds and fosters and actually helps the trust grow within that particular consumer environment, and that is something which worked in the Middle East and even North Africa. Again, Arab populations speaking the language have actually picked it up, and its services which support this, the call centers for ride bookings, the cash payment options, the ladies only service which they have, where ladies drivers will drive ladies only, so that whatever cultural requirements they have of separation between the genders is something which they have managed to execute. It gives you the understanding of how much they have gone into the local insights and the local preferences of that particular region. And they further engaged the users and created the rewards programs, they bundled it into packages, they offered conveniences, and that is how they built the value. See, we have been talking a lot about all the processes, the frameworks, the system, but look at examples of what has been done by organizations and how they have jumped the line and reached the victory mark ahead of competition, and they have done it in style. So, this gives you enough and more fodder to think of and apply in your own marketing scenarios. And the fun part is that you get money not only to spend on other platforms, but you can also be a great person and use it for charity. So, the ability to think so many scenarios through is amazing, and that is something which Karim should be applauded for. Similarly, in the case of Google, it was driven by its core offering. It understood its core very, very strongly, that it was looking at data driven solutions. Everything was based on consumer data, and they had to innovate because technology is changing. It is changing by the nanosecond. So, every time they think that they have the technology, that technology is already obsolete because somebody is working on its second version or third or umpteenth number of versions. So, therefore, offering tools which have kept pace with time, they have kept updating and moderating the algorithms. You have got AdWords, you have got AdSense, you have got Google Analytics, Google empowered business tools, you have got Maps, you have got Translate, now you have got AI based tools. All of these things are expanding, and each time they have bridged the gap between the software and the hardware. So, they have done it in Gmail, they have done it in Android, they have done it across various other capabilities that they have. They are meeting global and local demands, and they are continuously in the act of creating and refining the user experience. There is something new to be discovered, and each time something which is iterative and new which is being launched, it creates a slight amount of furor in the market. Hey, this is something new, have you tried it out? And people therefore make a beeline and try it out. And once they do, the adoption rate from early adopter to laggard is extremely fast in the case of Google, because you have to be with it nowadays. And this is why both companies have leveraged planning, strategic planning, to understand their environment and work accordingly. And they have addressed the customer needs, they have kept a mind and they have kept a note of what the customer really is looking for, built loyalty brick by brick, and the innovation also alongside it continuously over the years. So, that brings us to an end of today's module. The next session, we will be talking about innovation from this side of the border within the geography of India. We will take up an Indian marketing planning case for the next module. Thank you so much for being ardent listeners, and my best wishes to you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to this piece of literary snippet. We usually know William Shakespeare as the most revered figure in the history of English literature. But we often tend to forget that he has also been one of the most hated figures in literature. And here I am not talking only about those boys and girls who have to memorize long sections from Macbeth or King Lear or Julius Caesar before they can go and sit for their school or college exams. But I am also talking about people who are themselves quite famous authors. Tolstoy, for instance, considered the writings of Shakespeare to be, and I quote, crude, immoral, vulgar, and senseless. George Bernard Shaw absolutely loathed Shakespeare, as he did Homer. But perhaps no other criticism about Shakespeare is more damaging than the one which says that Shakespeare is a marvelous storyteller, provided someone has told him the story earlier. Now, this piece of criticism is particularly damaging because it is true. None of Shakespeare's plays contain any original story whatsoever. They are all written using pre-existing materials, pre-existing stories. Now, does that diminish the stature of Shakespeare as a dramatist? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. See you in the next episode of Literary Snippets.